Hey, Dan Passarelli here. Well, as you probably know, today was the FOMC announcement, and guess what crazy thing happened? Nothing crazy happened. They cut the interest rate by 25 basis points to a target of 4 to 4.25%. That was not the news. The news was what came afterwards and how the market reacted, and I found it a little bit interesting. As always, right after the announcement, the FOMC announcement, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell talks, and he's got some prepared statements. And one of the first things he said is that another rate cut is not a foregone conclusion. Far from it. So maybe there'll be another rate cut. But then he went on to say, well, there's a growing chorus of people on the Fed committee, on the FOMC committee, that don't want to cut rates. And hey, the rates are closer to neutral than they used to be. And there's a lack of data, which probably leads us to being more cautious. And we're not assuming that tariffs are just going to be a one-time inflationary thing. And the labor market is not clearly declining. People have different forecasts. And the risk of more persistent inflation needs to be managed. All these things are basically him saying, look, man, we're probably not going to cut rates. After, of course, he said, it's not a foregone conclusion, far from it. So definitely being a little bit political, but kind of showing what his hand is and what apparently, according to him, the hand of most people on the FOMC committee are. Now, that being said, and this is where it just gets weird, is that if you look at the Fed funds contract at the CME group, well, they only give a 34.1% chance of keeping rates unchanged in the next FOMC meeting 6 weeks from now on December 10th, and a 65.9% chance of a 25 basis point cut, which Powell said basically, if it was up to him at this point, he's not going to cut it. And A lot of things can change between now and then, and he did allude to that. And B, it's not totally up to him. But the CME group contract, where I get a lot of my fortune telling of what the Fed might do from, it has a very, very strong history of being ambitious, of being more expecting of easy monetary policy, cutting rates. So I guess it's not that big of a surprise that there's over-optimism in that contract for cutting rates, but it's still kind of weird. I mean, it's just always kind of weird. So what tends to happen is over time, as we get closer to the announcement, it gets closer and closer to reality. And again, reality does change between now and then, but what it seems like is very, very likely to happen with all the data that I watch and how it's trending, and from the comments from Powell, is that in all likelihood, come December 10th, there's not going to be a cut. And if things play out nice and slow and there's no major catalysts, that probably doesn't matter to the market. Well, I hope that insight helps. This is Dan Passarelli, Trade Smart.